The Velthari Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They had conquered 400 worlds. They had destroyed civilizations that dared to stand against them. Their ships blocked out the light of suns, and their armies moved like waves across planets. No species had ever defeated them. No species had ever come close. When their scout ships first found Earth, the Velthari were not impressed. They watched the humans from the darkness of space. They studied their radio signals and their television broadcasts. They saw a species that fought amongst itself over small patches of land. They saw primitive weapons and simple machines. They saw meat. High Commander Zora stood on the bridge of his warship and looked down at the blue planet. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he processed the data his scouts had gathered. The humans had nuclear weapons, yes, but nothing that could scratch Velthari armor. They had aircraft and tanks, but these were toys compared to the war machines of the Empire. Most importantly, they had no knowledge of what waited for them in the dark, between stars. Zorath made his decision in less than 1 rotation of the planet below. Earth would fall. Its people would become slaves or food, depending on how useful they proved to be. This was how it had always been. This was how it would always be. The invasion began on a Tuesday morning in late September. The first wave hit North America, Europe, and Asia at the same time. Velthari dropships fell from the sky like burning meteors. They crashed into cities and military bases with no warning. By the time human governments understood what was happening, thousands were already dead. Jake Morrison was 26 years old when the aliens came. He was a lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps, stationed at a forward operating base outside Denver. He had joined the military because he wanted to protect people. He had trained for years to fight enemies, he understood. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this. The first day was chaos. Communications went down across the country. Command structures collapsed. Jake found himself leading a small squad of 12 Marines through streets filled with smoke and screaming. They had their rifles and their training, but they had no idea what they were fighting. They found out soon enough. The Velthari soldiers were tall and covered in dark scales. They moved fast, faster than any human, and their weapons fired beams of light that cut through concrete like paper. Jake watched 2 of his Marines die in the first 5 minutes of contact. He ordered a retreat into a collapsed parking structure, and his squad dug in to make a stand. But the Velthari soldiers were not the worst thing that came from the sky. On the 3rd day, the aliens deployed their sacred weapon, the Kethra. Jake first saw them floating through the ruins of a shopping district. They looked almost beautiful, like jellyfish made of purple light. They drifted slowly through the air, their translucent bodies pulsing with an inner glow. For a moment, Jake thought they might be some kind of communication device or scanner. Then one touched Private Danny Cole. Danny was 19 years old. He had joined the Marines 6 months ago. He had a girlfriend back home in Texas and a dog named Buster. He was standing next to Jake when the Kethra brushed against his arm. The screening started immediately. Danny fell to his knees, clutching his arm where the creature had touched him. His skin turned gray, then black. His veins became visible beneath his flesh, dark lines spreading across his body like cracks in ice. He screamed and screamed, and then he stopped screaming because his lungs had dissolved inside his chest. It took less than 2 minutes. When it was over, there was nothing left of Danny Cole but a pile of wet ash and the echo of his voice in Jake's ears. Jake ran. His squad ran with him. They were not cowards. They were survivors. And they had just learned that some weapons could not be fought with bullets. The Kethra spread across the battlefield like a plague. They floated through buildings and bunkers. They passed through walls and fences. One touch meant death. There was no cure, no treatment, no defense. Human soldiers who had faced the Velthari with courage now fled in terror. from the glowing purple shapes that drifted silently through the smoke. High Commander. Zorath watched the chaos from orbit and felt satisfaction. The Kethra were perfect. They were holy instruments of the Velthari gods, living weapons blessed with the power to end any life they touched. A single Kethra had once killed an entire Velthari colony of 50,000 rebels. They were unstoppable. Within 1 week, human resistance had crumbled. Cities burned. Governments fell. The survivors hid in basements and bunkers, waiting for death to find them. The Velthari began landing their occupation forces, confident that the war was already won. Jake Morrison was among those who refused to give up. He gathered the remains of his squad and linked up with other survivors. They formed small resistance cells, striking at Velthari supply lines and then disappearing into the ruins. It was not much, but it was something. It was a reason to keep fighting, but the Kethra were everywhere now. Every mission meant risking contact with the floating death. Jake lost more friends. He watched more good people dissolve into nothing. He began to wonder if humanity had any future at all. Then came the night that changed everything. Jake was leading a raid on a Velthari communications tower. His team had made it inside when the alarm sounded. They tried to retreat, but the corridors filled with the purple glow of Kethra. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Jake felt one of the creatures land on his arm. He felt the burning start. He closed his eyes and thought of his mother, his father, the home he would never see again. He waited for the pain to consume him, but the pain faded. Jake opened his eyes. The Kethra was still attached to his arm, its body wrapped around his forearm like a glowing sleeve. But he was not dissolving. He was not dying. The creature pulsed once, twice, and then went still. Jake stared at the dead thing on his arm. His squad stared at him. Nobody spoke. In that moment, in a burning corridor on a conquered planet, humanity discovered something that would change the course of the war. Something that would echo across the galaxy. The weapons of the gods could be killed, and humans were the ones who could kill them. The news spread through the resistance like fire through dry grass. A Marine had survived contact with a Kethra. The creature had touched him, wrapped itself around his arm, and died. The man had lived. Jake Morrison became famous overnight. Survivors whispered his name in bunkers and basements across the country. Some said he was blessed by God. Others said he was a mutant, changed by radiation or some secret government experiment. A few said it was a trick, a lie spread to give false hope to the dying. But Jake knew what he had felt. The burning had been real. The pain had been real. And then both had stopped, as if someone had flipped a switch inside his body. The Kethra had tried to kill him, and his body had killed it instead. The resistance leaders needed to understand why. If Jake was truly immune, there might be a way to save others. There might be a way to fight back. They found Dr. Lisa Carter hiding in the basement of what remained of Stanford University. She was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life. Before the invasion, her work had been purely theoretical. Now, it was the most important research on Earth. Lisa was brought to Jake in an underground bunker somewhere in the mountains of Colorado. She was thin and tired, with dark circles under her eyes. But when she looked at Jake, her eyes were sharp and hungry for answers. She took samples of his blood, his saliva, his skin. She studied the dead Kethra that Jake had kept, preserved in a sealed container. She worked for 3 days without sleep, surrounded by equipment salvaged from destroyed laboratories. On the 4th day, she called a meeting. The resistance leaders gathered in the bunker's main room. Jake stood among them, feeling out of place among generals and politicians. Lisa stood at a makeshift whiteboard, her hands covered in marker stains. She explained what she had found in simple terms, because simple terms were all they had time for. The Kethra were parasitic organisms. They killed by injecting a chemical compound into their victims. This compound reacted with carbon-based biology to cause rapid cellular breakdown. In most species, this process was unstoppable. The victim cells would destroy themselves from the inside, turning solid tissue into wounds, liquid waste in minutes. But human biology was different. Lisa pointed to a diagram she had drawn. Human stomach acid, she said, operated at a pH level that was extremely hostile to Kethra tissue. More importantly, certain compounds found naturally in human bodies acted as a powerful poison to the creatures. Capsaicin receptors, the parts of the human body that process spicy food, produced a chemical that disrupted Kethra neural functions. The enzymes in human saliva broke down Kethra cell walls. In simple terms, she said, humans are toxic to them. Our bodies produce natural defenses that no other known species possesses. When a Kethra tries to inject its killing compound into a human, our biology fights back. The compound is neutralized. The Kethra dies from exposure to our tissue. The room was silent for a long moment. Then someone asked the obvious question. Did this mean all humans were immune? Lisa hesitated. She did not know for certain. Jake was one man, one data point. But based on her research, she believed that most humans would have similar resistance. Some might be more vulnerable than others, depending on their individual biology. But the species as a whole appeared to be naturally protected against the Valthyre's most feared weapon. The generals began talking at once. Plans were made. Orders were given. Word would be spread to every resistant cell, every hidden survivor. The Kethra could be defeated. Humanity could fight back. Jake did not feel like celebrating. He kept thinking about Danny Cole and all the others who had died. If humans were immune, why had so many of them dissolved like Danny had? Lisa had an answer for that too. Fear, she said. The mind was powerful. When soldiers saw their friends die horribly, when they felt the burning start, many of them simply gave up. Their bodies went into shock. Their hearts stopped. They died from terror before their natural defenses could save them. Jake understood. He had almost given up himself. If he had surrendered to the fear, if he had stopped fighting, he would be dead too. The key was not just biology. The key was will. The key was refusing to die. News of the discovery reached Amy Dawson 3 weeks later. Amy was 19 years old. She had been a college student in Kansas City before the invasion. She had been studying to become a veterinarian because she loved animals and wanted to help them. That dream seemed very far away now. Her family was dead. Her home was destroyed. She had been running and hiding for 2 months, eating whatever she could find, sleeping in burned-out buildings and abandoned cars. She had seen things that would haunt her forever. When the Kethra came to Kansas City, Amy had hidden in the basement of a collapsed shopping center. She had watched the purple lights float past her hiding spot. She had held her breath and prayed, but the Kethra had found her anyway. The first one touched her shoulder as she tried to crawl through a gap in the rubble. Amy felt the burning start. She felt the pain spread through her body. And she felt something else too. Something that surprised her. Rage. She was angry. Angry at the aliens who had taken everything from her. Angry at the universe for being so cruel. Angry at herself for hiding like a scared animal instead of fighting back. Amy grabbed the Kethra with her bare hands. She did not know that she was immune. She did not know that her body could fight the poison. She only knew that she refused to die on her knees in a pile of rubble. She squeezed. The creature burst in her hands like a water balloon filled with warm jelly. Amy stared at her hands. They were covered in purple slime. But they were not dissolving. They were not dying. More Kethra came. Amy killed them too. She grabbed them out of the air and crushed them against the ground. She tore them apart with her fingers. She screamed her rage into the darkness until her throat was raw. When it was over, 7 dead Kethra lay around her. Amy sat among their bodies, breathing hard. Covered in their remains, and for the first time since the invasion began, she smiled. She did not know it yet, but Amy Dawson was about to become the most famous human in the galaxy. She was about to do something that would end a war. She was about to eat the enemy's gods. Amy Dawson had been trapped behind enemy lines for 6 days. The Valkyrie had established a major base in what remained of Kansas City. Their ships flew constant patrols overhead. Their soldiers walked the streets in squads of 10, searching for survivors to capture or kill. Escape was impossible. Amy had survived by staying small and staying quiet. She moved through the ruins at night, slipping from building to building like a ghost. During the day, she hid in the deepest holes she could find, barely breathing, waiting for darkness to return. But she was running out of time. She had not eaten in 4 days. Her body was weak. Her hands shook. Her vision blurred at the edges. If she did not find food soon, she would die. Not from the aliens, not from their weapons, but from simple hunger. On the 6th night, Amy made her way to the collapsed shopping center where she had killed the Kethra. She remembered seeing a food court somewhere in the ruins. Maybe there was something left. Canned goods, packaged snacks, anything. She searched for hours. She found nothing. The Valkyrie had been thorough. Every store had been stripped. Every vending machine had been emptied. There was nothing left for a starving human to eat. Amy sat down in the middle of the ruined food court. Dust covered everything. Broken glass crunched under her weight. Above her, the night sky was visible through holes in the ceiling, filled with the lights of alien ships. She was going to die here. She knew it now. There was no escape, no rescue, no miracle coming to save her. She had fought so hard, survived so much, and it would all end in this pile of rubble. Then she saw the Kethra. One of the creatures floated through a gap in the wall. It was smaller than the one she had killed before, its purple glow dim and weak. It moved slowly, drifting toward her like a leaf on the wind. Amy watched it come. She was too tired to be afraid, too hungry to care. The Kethra came closer. It brushed against her leg. Amy felt a brief warmth, nothing more. The creature slid off her skin and fell to the ground, twitching. Within seconds, it was dead. Amy looked at the small body lying at her feet. It looked like a jellyfish, she thought. Or maybe a mushroom. Something soft and wet and organic. Her stomach growled. Amy had never been a squeamish person. Growing up, she had helped her father clean fish he caught at the lake. She had dissected frogs in biology class. She had planned to become a veterinarian, which meant dealing with blood and guts and all the messy parts of living creatures. She picked up the dead Kethra. It was warm in her hands. It smelled strange, like copper and flowers mixed together. She thought about what she was considering. She thought about how crazy it was. She thought about all the normal rules that used to govern her life. Rules about what was food and what was not food. Those rules belonged to the old world. The old world was gone. Amy bit into the Kethra. The taste was unexpected. Not bad, exactly. Salty, with a strange sweetness underneath. The texture was soft, like raw egg white mixed with gelatin. It should have been disgusting. It probably was disgusting. Amy did not care. She chewed. She swallowed. She took another bite. What Amy did not know was that she was being watched. The Valkyrie had surveillance drones scattered throughout the city. Small flying machines, no bigger than a fist, equipped with cameras that could see in complete darkness. They recorded everything. Every human who moved through the ruins. Every resistance fighter who tried to slip past their patrols. Every death. One of these drones had followed Amy to the shopping center. It hovered silently in the shadows, its camera focused on the young human female sitting alone in the rubble. It recorded her as she picked up the dead Kethra. It recorded her as she examined it. It recorded her as she raised it to her mouth. It recorded everything that followed. Within hours, the footage was transmitted to the Valkyrie command ship in orbit. A junior officer reviewed it first. He watched the recording 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. Then he sent it to his superior. His superior sent it higher. Higher still. Eventually, the footage reached High Commander Zorath. Zorath sat in his command chamber and watched the recording play on the screen before him. His 4 eyes did not blink. His clawed hands gripped the arms of his chair, hard enough to leave marks in the metal. On the screen, a human female sat in the ruins of her destroyed city. She was thin and dirty, her hair matted with dust and blood. She looked like she was dying. She probably was dying, but she was also eating a Kethra. She bit into the sacred flesh. She chewed. She swallowed. She reached for another body. She ate that one too. Zorath watched the recording 17 times. He did not speak. He did not move. His officers stood around him in terrified silence, afraid to interrupt whatever was happening inside their commander's mind. The Kethra were not just weapons to the Valkyrie. They were holy. They were gifts from the gods themselves, living instruments of divine judgment. For 12,000 years, no species had ever survived their touch. For 12,000 years, they had been the ultimate proof of Valkyrie superiority. And now a starving human girl was eating them like they were nothing more than food. Zorath finally spoke. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. He said, "What are these creatures?" No one answered. No one could answer. Zorath played the recording again. He watched the human female finish eating the second Kethra. He watched her lick her fingers clean. He watched her stand up, still weak, still starving, but alive. More alive than she had been before. He watched her smile. The recording ended. The screen went dark. Zorath sat in silence for a long time. Then he gave an order that would change the course of the war. "Send this footage to every ship in the fleet," he said. "Send it to every soldier on the ground. Send it to the homeworld." His officers stared at him in confusion. They asked why he would spread such a disturbing recording. Zorath turned to look at them. For the first time in his long career, his eyes held something that looked like fear. "Because they need to see," he said. "They need to understand what we are truly fighting against. They need to know that we may have made a terrible mistake." The footage spread through the Valkyrie fleet like a disease. Within 1 day, every ship in orbit had received the recording. Within 3 days, it had reached every soldier on the ground. Within 1 week, it had traveled across the stars to the Valkyrie homeworld itself. Everywhere the footage went, it left chaos behind. Valkyrie soldiers who had fought 1,000 battles without fear began to hesitate. They would see a human across the battlefield and remember the recording. They would remember the young female sitting in the rubble, eating their sacred weapons with her bare hands. They would remember her smile. Some soldiers refused to deploy Kethra anymore. They said the creatures were useless against humans. They said using them was a waste. But their commanders knew the truth. The soldiers were not concerned about effectiveness. They were afraid of what the humans might do if more Kethra were sent against them. They were afraid the humans might be hungry. On the Valkyrie homeworld, the footage caused something close to a religious crisis. The Kethra were not just weapons. They were holy creatures, blessed by the gods, and given to the Valkyrie as proof of their divine right to rule the galaxy. Every Valkyrie child learned stories about the Kethra. Every Valkyrie temple contained shrines to the sacred organisms. And now those sacred organisms were being eaten by primitives. Priests demanded answers. Scholars debated endlessly. Some said the footage must be fake, a clever trick created by human propaganda. Others said the humans must be demons, sent by dark gods to test the faithful. A few very quietly began to ask if perhaps the Velthari had been wrong about everything. If the Kethra could be killed so easily, were they truly divine? If humans could eat the instruments of the gods, what did that make humanity? If a god could bleed, was it really a god at all? High Commander Zorath watched his empire begin to crack from the inside. He had spread the footage himself, believing that his people needed to understand the threat they faced. He had thought the truth would unite them. Instead, it was tearing them apart. On Earth, the humans noticed the change immediately. Jake Morrison led his resistance squad on raids almost every night now. They hit supply depots and communication centers. They ambushed patrols and freed prisoners. And everywhere they went, they found the same thing. The Velthari were afraid. It was obvious in the way they moved. They no longer walked through human cities like conquerors. They stayed in groups, weapons raised, eyes constantly scanning for threats. They flinched at shadows. They shot at noises in the dark. They were no longer hunters. They were prey, and they knew it. Jake's squad captured a Velthari soldier during one of their raids. The alien was young by their standards, barely more than a child. He had been separated from his unit during the fighting and had hidden in a basement. Alone and terrified, Jake questioned him through a translator device they had salvaged from a destroyed Velthari vehicle. The young soldier answered every question. He held nothing back. He was too scared to lie. He told Jake about the footage. He described how it had spread through the fleet. He explained what the Kethra meant to his people and why seeing a human eat one had shattered their confidence. Jake asked him what the Velthari soldiers feared most about humans. The young alien thought for a long moment. Then he spoke. He said, "We fear that you do not fear us." He said, "We have conquered hundreds of worlds. We have defeated thousands of species. All of them feared us. All of them begged for mercy at the end. But your people do not beg. Your people fight. Even when you are losing, even when you are dying, you fight," he said. "And now we know why. You are not afraid of death. You are not afraid of pain. You are not afraid of our weapons or our armies or our gods," he said. "You eat what kills us. You smile while you do it." He said, "We do not know how to fight an enemy like that. We have never faced an enemy like that. We did not know such enemies could exist." Jake let the young soldier go. He gave him food and water and pointed him toward the nearest Velthari base. The alien looked at him in confusion, unable to understand why he was being shown mercy. Jake told him to spread the word. "Tell your commanders that we are coming. Tell them that every day they stay on our world, more of them will die. Tell them that we will not stop until they are gone. Tell them that Earth belongs to us." The young soldier ran into the darkness. Jake watched him go, then turned back to his squad. The tide was turning. Everyone could feel it. 1 month after the footage began to spread, Jake led a strike team against a major Velthari forward operating base outside what used to be Denver. They expected heavy resistance. They expected a bloody fight. They found the base abandoned. The Velthari had fled in the night. They had left behind equipment, weapons, vehicles. They had left behind food and medical supplies. They had left in such a hurry that they had not even destroyed their communication systems. In the command center, Jake found a message waiting on a display screen. It was written in broken English, clearly translated by a machine that did not fully understand the language. The message contained only 2 words. "We surrender." Jake stared at those words for a long time. He thought about Danny Cole and all the others who had died. He thought about the cities that had burned and the families that had been destroyed. He thought about everything humanity had lost in the past months. Then he thought about Amy Dawson, sitting alone in the rubble of Kansas City, eating the monsters that had been sent to kill her. He thought about what that moment meant. Not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. Humanity had faced the worst weapons the Velthari could offer. They had faced creatures that had destroyed entire civilizations. And they had not just survived. They had eaten them. Jake allowed himself a small smile. It was the first time he had smiled since the invasion began. The war was not over yet. But the end was coming. And when it came, it would be on humanity's terms. The prey had become the predator. And the galaxy would never forget it. The official end of the war came 3 months after the footage of Amy Dawson spread across the galaxy. The Velthari High Council, rulers of an empire that had existed for 12,000 years, sent a formal request for peace to the governments of Earth. Their message was humble in a way that no Velthari communication had ever been before. They did not demand. They did not threaten. They asked. They asked if humanity would allow them to stop fighting. The terms they offered were unprecedented in galactic history. The Velthari would withdraw all forces from the Sol system immediately. They would pay reparations in the form of advanced technology, enough to advance human civilization by centuries. They would sign a non-aggression treaty that would last 10,000 years. They would recognize Earth as a sovereign world, protected by the full force of galactic law. In exchange, they asked for only one thing. They wanted to understand. Human leaders debated the offer for weeks. Some wanted to reject it. They wanted revenge for all the people who had died, for all the cities that had burned. They wanted the Velthari to suffer the way humanity had suffered, but cooler heads prevailed. Humanity was exhausted. The invasion had killed millions and destroyed infrastructure across the globe. Continuing the war would mean more death, more suffering, more loss. And there was no guarantee that humanity would win. The Velthari still had thousands of ships. They still had armies and weapons beyond human comprehension. The peace was accepted. The treaty was signed. 3 weeks later, a Velthari diplomatic shuttle landed at a rebuilt airfield outside Geneva, Switzerland. The city had been chosen carefully. It was neutral ground, a place where nations had come to talk for centuries. It seemed appropriate for the first formal contact between humans and aliens. The shuttle doors opened. A single Velthari emerged. His name was Sareth. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His scales had faded from dark blue to pale gray. He moved slowly, carefully, each step deliberate and measured. He had served the Empire for over 1,000 years. He had seen worlds rise and fall. He had watched species go extinct. He had never seen anything like humans. Sareth had requested this meeting personally. He had not asked to speak with presidents or generals or diplomats. He had asked to speak with Amy Dawson, the young woman who had eaten his gods. Amy was brought to Geneva from Kansas City, where she had been helping to rebuild. She was still thin, still marked by the months she had spent surviving in the ruins. But she was stronger now. She had food and shelter and people who cared about her. She had a future again. She was also confused. She did not understand why an alien ambassador wanted to talk to her specifically. She was nobody important. She was just a girl who had done what she needed to do to survive. The meeting took place in a small conference room. Just Amy and Sareth, with translators and guards waiting outside. The room was plain, with a single table and 2 chairs. Nothing fancy. Nothing intimidating. Sareth lowered himself into one of the chairs. Amy sat across from him. They looked at each other in silence for a long moment. Then Sareth spoke. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. He said, "I have traveled across the stars to ask you one question. My people have debated this question since we first saw the recording. We have argued and fought and prayed for understanding. But no answer has satisfied us, he said. So I came here to ask you directly." Amy waited. Sareth leaned forward. His 4 eyes studied her face with an intensity that would have terrified her a year ago. Now she simply looked back at him, steady and calm. He asked, "Why did you eat them?" Amy was quiet for a long moment. She thought about that night in the shopping center. She thought about the hunger that had gnawed at her stomach. She thought about the rage that had burned in her heart. She said, "I was hungry." Sareth waited, sensing there was more. Amy continued. She said, "And I was angry. Your people took everything from me. My home, my family, my future. You sent those things to kill us, to make us afraid, to show us that we were nothing." She said, "But I refused to be nothing. I refused to die on my knees, whimpering in the dark. If I was going to die, I was going to die fighting." She said, "So I ate your weapons. I ate your sacred creatures. I ate the things you thought would destroy us." She leaned forward, matching Sareth's intensity. She said, "I wanted you to know something. I wanted you to understand what you were really fighting against. We are not prey. We are not victims. We are not weak." She said, "We are survivors. We adapt. We overcome. And if we have to, we will eat your gods and ask for seconds." Sareth was silent for a long time. His old eyes studied the young woman before him. He saw the scars on her hands where she had grabbed the Kethra. He saw the hardness in her eyes that had not been there before the invasion. He saw a species that had been pushed to the edge of extinction and had pushed back. He lowered his head. It was a gesture of respect among his people, though Amy did not know this. He said, "We thought you were primitives. We thought you were animals, waiting to be tamed. We did not understand what you truly were." Amy asked, "What are we?" Sareth looked up at her. For the first time in his 1,000 years of service, his voice trembled. He said, "You are the species that devours fear itself." The meeting ended shortly after. Sareth returned to his shuttle. Amy returned to Kansas City. Life went on. 50 years later, humanity had spread across a dozen star systems. They had built ships that could cross the galaxy. They had established colonies on worlds that had never known human footsteps. They had become a power in their own right, respected and feared by species that had ruled the stars for millennia. The Veltri remained their closest allies. The treaty had held. Trade flourished between the two species. Friendships formed. Old hatreds faded into history. Amy Dawson lived long enough to see the first human colony ship named after her. She was 92 years old when it launched, surrounded by family and friends. She watched it rise into the sky, carrying 10,000 humans toward a new world, a new future. A reporter asked her if she had any final words for the colonists. Amy smiled. It was the same smile she had worn in the ruins of Kansas City all those years ago. She said, "Remember where you came from. Remember what we survived. And remember this, no matter what the universe throws at you, no matter how dark things get, never give up." She said, "We are human. And we do not break." She said, "Now go out there and make the galaxy remember that." The ship disappeared into the stars. Amy watched it go, tears in her eyes, and somewhere, in the archives of 1,000 alien civilizations, the footage still played. A young woman, alone and starving, eating the monsters that had been sent to kill her. A reminder to the galaxy that humanity was not to be hunted. Humanity was the hunter, and the universe would never forget.